Father?
Calliope, you are not my daughter.
No. But I know who you are. They said you would come.
Death cannot hold those with purpose, Kratos.
Athena.
As we speak, the war for Olympus rages on, and mankind suffers.
The death of Zeus is all that matters. We are not finished, Zeus.
I will tolerate your insolence no more!
If I help you, we will both.
The gates of Hades have never held me.
I knew you would be back, Spartan.
Zeus will not fall as easily as Ares.
All I have left is my bow. Free me, and it is yours.
You must seek the source of the strength, the flame of Olympus.
I enjoy listening to your pain.
My sacrifice to save Zeus has brought me to a higher existence.
Leave me be!
Calm yourself, Smithcard.
Your future is cloaked in shadow.
I see truths that I did not before.
I seek the flame of Olympus.
Perhaps these will earn back your trust.
Play with toys, Kratos.
As long as Zeus reigns, there is no hope for mankind. Destroy the flame, Kratos.
If you can find your way out of the underworld, I'm sure you can find your way to the flame of Olympus.
Soon enough, we will have our time to play.
Hello everybody and welcome back to part 3 of Let's Play God of War 3. We're starting here in the main menu. You see the main menu immediately after the epic opening title sequence designed and produced by Imaginary Forces, who were also recruited to create all of the flashback sequences that we see throughout the course of God of War 3. They did a phenomenal job. It's one of the many aesthetically phenomenal things about God of War 3. God of War 3 has a lot of amazing, aesthetically wonderful things. As I discussed in part 2, when we saw some of these options in the pause menu of part 2, you know, there's not that much in terms of accessibility. I'm just showing off what there is.
My vengeance ends now.
Showing off what there is, and also the fact that Kratos has a very epic line whenever you start the game, really getting you into the feeling of God of War 3, the feeling of being revenge-driven just right off the bat. It's really phenomenal. This game has one singular mission, and it focuses in on that and does it to the best of its ability. I don't know if it does it as well as God of War 2, we're going to talk about that, but it really focuses in and provides you an experience that, especially while you're playing it, is really excellent. But here we are in part 3, we're back in the Forge, we have just spoken with Hephaestus, and now we need to leave the underworld, because we can't kill Zeus from down here. We have to get moving, and the only way to really reliably do that is get past the Warden and King of the underworld, i.e. the man the underworld is named after. We have to go and chat with Hades, voiced by the great Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown, most famously the voice of Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob, does a phenomenal job as Hades in God of War 3. Stellar performance. All the early reviews for God of War 3 back in 2010 when this game first came out all praised Clancy Brown's performance, and for good reason. His Hades performance in this game is really wonderful. This looks like an obvious spot for a trap for a battle with 4 stone Talos, and look at that, I'm not calling them stone men this time. I will be, going back and forth between Talos and stone men. Either way, this looks like a situation where you're going to have to fight 4 of these goddamn stone people. There you go, stone people, that's the third one. All at once, but you don't. They're just there for aesthetics. Don't worry about it. We got these hounds instead. Hounds, very easy to deal with, exactly the same as in God of War 2. A lot of things in God of War 3 exactly the same as they were in God of War 2. For good reason. God of War 2 was a phenomenal title. Very well loved. Rightly so. God of War 3, I feel, is just I really like God of War 3, but there's no denying the fact that God of War 3 is a repeat of is just a repeat of God of War 2. We're upgrading the Blades of Exile here. Not much to talk about here. It's about time we finally upgraded them before you enter the Palace of Hades and actually start your next boss battle with Hades. You want to make sure your blades are at level 2, along with your bow being max level, i.e. level 2. Anyway, God of War 3 is in a lot of ways a repeat of God of War 2. The structure of it, the formula, the fact that even though God of War 3 is supposed to be the second part of Kratos' big revenge against Zeus, it really just feels like a retread of what we did in God of War 2. It's not really an expansion, it's just a repeat of what we did. The biggest evidence to that is what they do with Zeus in this game. We spend all this time in God of War 2 rightfully hyping up Zeus, even when he's not on screen. We can feel his presence. Really well done. We'll talk about that more a little bit later, because we have another cutscene coming up with Pandora.
Kratos?
How do you know of me?
You're the ghost of Sparta. Everyone knows who you are. Everyone is afraid of you.
There are reasons for that.
I'm not afraid of you.
It is good you're not afraid, child. Fear is a heavy burden.
I'm not a child, Kratos.
It does not matter what you are. My concerns lay elsewhere.
Kratos, please. I need you to free me.
The quest for freedom is also a heavy burden. I cannot help you.
You have regained the Blade of Olympus. Let the rage of Sparta fuel your flame.
Well, we'll get to it a little bit later. Anyway, Pandora, who still hasn't been named yet, was holding the Blade of Olympus for us. And now we got it back. The Blade of Olympus is God of War 3's Rage mode. It is probably the weakest of the Rage modes that we've had in any God of War game. The situation that the actual Rage mode powers that we had in God of War 1 and God of War 2 were, I think, superior to the Blade of Olympus. The Blade of Olympus is kind of random in how herky-jerky it is to move around. It's difficult to control, so I'm not going to be using it all that much. There are going to be some situations where I use it because the invincibility frames of the blade of the blade or of the Rage of Sparta, whatever you want to call it, is really, really useful. But it's not that viable of an option compared to the Rage modes of God of War 1 and God of War 2. I will rarely be using it. It's usually going to be exclusively for boss fights that I'm struggling with. There really isn't much use to using Rage of Sparta outside of very certain niche situations, or just to take advantage of the invincibility frames, because it does a lot of damage, but it's kind of unwieldy in how you actually use it. So it's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. Went back to double check if that chest was unopened. It still remained unopened. God of War 3 is a game where you return to areas a lot, and when you do, chests are normally going to be closed up again, so you can get new items from the item chests. This is one of the cases where that is not what's happening, but in most cases, when you return to areas in God of War 3, you will find that you will find that chests that you opened before to get an item will be closed again, and you can get another item from it, because God of War 3 recycles a lot of areas and has you visit a lot of the same areas again multiple times. We'll be seeing that later on. For now, though, we have these two Cerberus. Very, very straightforward fight. Not much to write home about here. You can block everything they do. You can parry for additional damage. You can keep your distance to use Bow of Apollo. You can do regular attacks. They don't have that much health, even in Chaos mode. They are not that bad. It's just time consuming, because there's two of them, and it's Chaos mode, so they have a lot of health. So obviously it's pretty time consuming. While we do this, though, let me go back to what I was talking about with Zeus. God of War 2, Zeus, major presence. You see him in the beginning, you see him in the end. He's talked about a lot in the middle. He is this constant presence in Kratos' adventure in God of War 2, even if you don't see him all that much. He doesn't treat you as that much of a threat after he kills you, and in the God of War 2 novelization, he knows that Kratos is alive in the island creation, but still doesn't bother going after him, because he doesn't have to. because he doesn't consider Kratos that big of a threat, at least not for a while anyway. But then in God of War 3, when there is ample reason to consider Kratos a threat, as we will be seeing in this video and all the videos moving onward, and as we saw in Part 1 where Kratos murders Poseidon, Zeus still doesn't do anything, and there's lore reasons for why Zeus doesn't do anything, but it's still disappointing that we're repeating the same Zeus is this background threat that isn't going to appear, because, spoiler alert, he's not going to show up again until the very end of the game. He's going to have a few voice lines here and there, but he's not really going to actually show up and do stuff again until the very end. So it's disappointing that we're repeating the same things from the same plot beats from God of War 2 and God of War 3. It's not something you notice as you play, because as you play you're being drawn in by the wonderful
I can understand why Zeus was so ridiculous. You are a capable boy.
Thank you, Mr. Hades. Anyway, you can understand why you don't think about this stuff as you play the game, because of how wonderful the game looks and the presentation, and mechanically it's sound, technically it's very impressive. You're not thinking about it as you play, but in hindsight, this kind of stuff comes up, that God of War 3 is in a lot of ways just a repeat of God of War 2, except there's less reason for it to be like this again a second time. For any complaints you may have about Ascension or Chains of Olympus or Ghost of Sparta or the first two God of War games stories, they don't really repeat. They are all original stories. And then we have God of War 3, which is in a lot of ways just 2 again, but shorter this time and more epic. No, it's a quibble. It's a story quibble, but it is a quibble nonetheless that I have with this. Anyway, let's talk about things I actually like and not complain anymore, right? Because I really like this game. I still, despite all that stuff I just said, I really, really enjoy it. Let's actually talk a bit more about the voice actors in the game, because I already mentioned Clancy Brown giving a fantastic performance as Hades. That fight was very simple. It's just a grab fight. Unarmored soldiers. This note, by the way, is from Barbarian King. Has some loose connections to the God of War comic, but it's mostly just a reference to God of War 1 and 2. But some loose connections to the God of War comic that we discussed in the interlude video. Anyway, Poseidon. Originally voiced by Fred Tatasciore, or Tatascore, I don't know, a very different voice actor who gave very different performance in God of War 1. Here's Hades again.
Welcome, Spartan. Come in. Make yourself at home. This time, you won't be leaving.
Gideon Emery voiced Poseidon, both in Ghost of Sparta and in God of War 3 in this title. Great performance, if kind of short. Linda Hunt was the original voice actress for Gaia, and still is, I think, as far as I know, she's still the narrator, the voice of the narrator for the opening of God of War 3, but the actual voice of Gaia in-game is now Suzanne Blakesley, who voices Gaia for the actual in-game stuff, which is, I would say it's kind of weird, but there's actually there is actually a Reddit thread that I came across where you actually see Linda Hunt voice some of the voice lines of Gaia in game, and you can kind of understand why they decided to go with Suzanne Blakesley for the voice of in-game Gaia versus narrator Gaia. Linda Hunt does a great job as the narrator, but it feels kind of off to hear her voice Gaia in actual in-game scenarios. So you can kind of understand why Suzanne Blakesley would be tasked with voicing Gaia in-game versus Linda Hunt. Meanwhile, Zeus, both in God of War 2 and God of War 3, was voiced by Corey Burton. Paul Eden originally played him in the original God of War. Very different performance, because it was a very different take on Zeus, back when they didn't know what Zeus was going to ultimately end up being. And Fred Tastacore, the guy who originally voiced Poseidon, voiced Zeus in Ghost of Sparta for some reason. And of course Kratos, the great T.C. Carson. Voices. Mr. Hades, please stop interrupting me. Actually, it's a good thing you interrupted me, because this is actually my very first death in God of War 3. I didn't talk about this. I talked a little bit about how God of War 3 is a little bit easier than God of War 1 and 2. Actually, compared to all the God of War games, even in Chaos Mode, because of just how mechanically sound it is and just how fun it is to play and how intuitive everything is. I had the best run of my life playing God of War 3 Remastered for the channel here for this playthrough. Spoiler alert, I end up dying 16 times over the entirety of the game, and it's pretty amazing just how few times I died compared to other God of War titles. Usually my average is like 20-something deaths, but here I died less than 20. It's I don't know. I was really proud of myself but when I got to the end and realized just how few times I died. This battle is kind of a pain. The 2 Minotaurs at the same time. 1 Minotaur at a time isn't really that bad. They're really easy to deal with. 2 at a time can be kind of a pain, as evidenced by the fact that I did die. There's no real gimmicks or tricks to it. If you get the Minotaurs close, then use some Army of Sparta to do some crowd control damage. There's a few hounds that also reinforce them. There's no backup after you kill the hounds or kill one of the Minotaurs. So 2 Minotaurs, a few hounds. It's not that crazy a scenario, but it is the first. I would say that fight, not just the fact that because I died there, but you know, due to the fact that we're about to get a boss battle and all that stuff, that fight with the 2 Minotaurs and the hounds is kind of your forewarning that the game is starting to uptick in difficulty again. You know, after we were taken down by Zeus and after Gaia betrayed us, we were in a scenario where we started all over again. We're weak and fighting basic enemies. Now, the game is going to stop taking it easy on us. Nice reference to Chains of Olympus. You should check it out if you haven't. Great game, great short game. The game is going to start. It's going to stop taking it easy on us from this point onward. Again, not to say the game ever gets difficult. Part of the fact is that the basic enemies are all grabbable, and you can use them to ram into other enemies, thus eliminating a lot of the threat and challenge from many potentially dangerous scenarios in God of War 3. The fact that a majority of these enemies can just be grabbed is kind of breaks the tension, and again allows you ample room, especially in lower difficulties, for experimentation of weaponry and magic and items. One of the reasons why God of War 3 is so fun is that it's not, you know, what's the term I want to use? It's not ball-bustingly difficult. Let's go with that. It's not ball-bustingly difficult. It is at an appropriate level, even at its greatest challenge, even at its highest difficulty. It is at an appropriate level, as evidenced by the fact that I had like the best run ever doing this, recording all this. This is, I believe, our last item chest pre-Hades, and our second upgrade of the game. We upgraded our health back in the previous episode, now we're upgrading our magic. Alright, so before we can actually get to Hades, we have to solve his little puzzle here, involving Persephone and his Hades statue. Very, very straightforward. Very straightforward, but we do have to do it one bit at a time. We have that wheel, but we don't actually want to bother turning it just yet. Or we'll get a whole series of cutscenes that prove why that was a bad idea in the first place. Instead, we're going to take this elevator down. and grab that pile of blocks that helped us out before. We don't need it where it needs to be now, so we are going to go ahead and use it for the other wheel. Again, that gate closes, but it doesn't really... Oh, it doesn't even close. That's weird. We do get these, as I was saying, Mr. Hades, we do get these additional harpies. Harpies always annoying, even in God of War 3 where things are easier, but, you know, take advantage of invisible walls. The harpies can't really follow you down this little slope, so keep your distance back here. You can dispatch of the harpies one at a time. And there we go. Nice. I really do like how the game builds up its big boss battles. Spoiler alert, we're about to, you know, come up to another big boss battle, our first one since Poseidon, going up against Hades, the second of the three brother kings that we saw in God of War 1. The three brother kings being Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Poseidon is dead. Hades, you know, probably next. And then Zeus will be all alone. Well, you know, in a sense, he'll be all alone. The game does a really good job of building tension and of building tension and of getting you hyped for the bigger boss battles. As I mentioned in part 2, that was one of the few videos in this series that's going to be quiet, that's going to be that's not going to conclude or include any kind of big encounter. Starting with episode 3 until episode 8, it's basically just going to be one big encounter after the other. One big encounter after the other. Yeah, just one epic encounter after the other. The game does have a slight pacing issue where after episode... What is it? After episode 8, after the events of episode 8, things really slow down again for the next, what, like 2 hours before you actually get towards the ending. So God of War 3 starts off epic with its first half hour. Then it slows down, then it ramps up again for a good long time, for many, many hours, and then it slows down again, and then finally we get the finale. It's... Saying it out loud, it makes sense. Playing it, it does feel a little disappointing after one particular encounter, that things just really slow down considerably for a while, because the game really trains you starting with this point to expect a ramp up of epicness and of set pieces, and it doesn't let up for a good long time, but it does eventually let up, and it does so before the ending. And it's kind of disappointing that it does let up eventually to have things slow down. For now, though, let's go say hi to Hades. Let's get into our boss fight.
Kratos, so glad you could carve out some time for us. You know, we need it. I sense some bad blood between us, Kratos. Oh, all the memories. They're overwhelming, really. Let's see. How many sins have you committed against me? Oh, that's right. You murdered my niece, Athena. And what else? What else? And you killed my brother, Poseidon. And I have not forgotten that it was you who butchered my beautiful queen. I will see you suffer as I have suffered. Your soul is mine.
Okay, starting the boss fight. Do this QTE, or else you will immediately die, because you will have your soul taken. Phase 1 of Hades, very straightforward. Hades has very, very few attacks in Phase 1. He has a Stomp, it can't be blocked, you have to roll away from that. You can parry it if you want, but it requires very, very strict timing. His basic attacks with the Claws of Hades, which are his weapons, those can be blocked, you don't have to worry about that. Stay away from his Stomps, hit him with the Bow of Apollo to punish him if he forces you to a distance. Get in close, attack. If he uses the Claws of Hades, just block or parry, you're fine. Don't bother using your magic at all for Phase 1, you don't want to waste it, you want to save it for Phase 2. For situations where you may feel like you're in trouble and need some invincibility frames. It doesn't take that long to end Phase 1. Moving on, this is the second half of Phase 1, where Hades will stand at the far end of the arena and perform one or two attacks. He's either going to do some basic swipes, or he's going to spin his claws around. He can either spin them on the ground, or he can spin them up in the air. We'll see the tell for how he spins in just a moment, once he's finally done doing his basic swipes here. There we go. If he does a little backspin, it means he's going to swipe. It means he's going to spin his claws up in the air, and he's going to swing. If he does a little backspin, it means he's going to spin his claws up in the air. If he doesn't do a little backspin, it means he's going to spin his claws down to the ground, so you jump over it. So you know which ones to jump over and which ones not to jump over. After you do enough damage, you will be able to remove some of Hades' flesh. In order to actually move on with the fight, you have to destroy the flesh before it gets back to him. Otherwise, you're just going to be in a repeat of Phase 1 over and over again, just a loop of Phase 1. After you destroy the flesh, Hades is going to do this this screen nuke attack to attack basically everything except for one area. Get into that one area that he's not going to attack, and you'll be just fine. Afterwards, he's going to jump over the ceiling, do a big shockwave attack, and then once he is done with that shockwave attack, you move on to Phase 2. Phase 2 is similar to Phase 1, but he's got a lot more attacks now. He has plenty more attacks. He doesn't just have to stomp and basic swipes. He has some long-range Claw of Hades attacks. He's much more dangerous. He doesn't do that much damage. He doesn't do damage with his stomps, but his Claw of Hades attacks can do a lot more damage. Be more liberal with your use of magic. This is the last serious phase of this part of the fight. So this is the point where you want to start using magic, and you want to start using Rage of Sparta to speed things up and to lessen the risk of taking unnecessary damage, especially in Chaos mode, where you would take a lot more damage from hits and stuff. The second half of Phase 2 is similar to the second half of Phase 1. He's going to do some basic claw swipes. He has a new attack where he unleashes the Souls of Hades, an attack that we've seen done in previous God of War games by us. He can unleash some slow-moving Skull Souls at you. You can just block those or parry those back at him, it's fine. The basic claw swipes can also just be blocked, so there really isn't that much of a threat. Just take it slow, use your Bow of Apollo. Use your Bow of Apollo, parry back the skulls if you can for additional damage, and you'll be done with the second half of Phase 2 soon enough. You'll rip out another chunk of flesh, and just like at the end of Phase 1, you want to make sure that you destroy this flesh, otherwise we'll be stuck in a loop of Phase 2 forever, and you won't be able to move on. So use all your attacks, destroy the flesh, get some health back, there you go. Once again, Hades is going to revert to his screen nuke attack, exactly the same as in the end of Phase 1. Here we go. Get into the one spot that isn't going to be nuked by the chains, and you'll be fine. We move on to Phase 3 of the fight. Very, very simple. He has this sort of threatening attack, where a seemingly threatening attack, where he digs his claws into the ground and starts unleashing them where Kratos is. But as long as you're moving with the Bow of Apollo, you're moving just fast enough where the Claws of Hades can't actually get to you. And if Hades summons the souls of Cerberus, of his Cerberus hounds, then it doesn't matter. The Cerberus hounds can be blocked very easily. You don't even have to parry them or anything, or dodge them. After that, we move on to the second half of Phase 3, where we pull off some more flesh and get into a cinematic minigame encounter that will end phase 3. So the second half of phase 3 is this minigame. You have to move, you have to dodge, you have to attack Hades. You can't just move and dodge, you do actually have to engage with this and attack Hades directly, or you're never going to be done. Hades is going to try to pull you into the River Styx. Don't let him, obviously. Keep attacking him, and eventually you will be done with this phase of the battle. Speaking of souls, we need the soul of a god in order to bypass the Hyperion Gate and move on to different areas of Hades and Olympus. So I think we can kind of start to guess why we specifically need to go after Hades here, the only god in the underworld. He's got something that we need, and we are going to take it back. Well, not take it back. We're just going to take it from him. You know, you get it. We need the Soul of God. And he's got one. Eventually we do enough damage and we get into the QT. So here we go. Time to end the boss fight. Very, very simple QT here. This is just mash and circle. You just do this over and over again, and Mr. Hades will die. And we'll get a new weapon. Our second weapon of the game, this is the Claws of Hades. Fantastic weapon. I won't be using them all that much in Chaos Mode of God of War 3, but in lower difficulty playthroughs, it's really, really fun to use the Claws of Hades. They're really cool. Excellent combos, great magic associated with it. Good stuff. Take care of these undead soldiers here. We're done with the boss fight. Oh, no, we're not. Surprise Phase 4, or Phase 5, depending on how you want to classify the minigame. I am going to die once to this this final phase of Hades, so that's my second death. Alright, do you have to use the Claws of Hades here? I think you're stuck using the Claws of Hades here. I don't think you're actually able to switch into the into the Blades of Exile when you have to use the Claws of Hades. Either way, Hades doesn't have that much health at this point. He's got two attacks. He's either going to smack the ground in one specific spot, or he's going to do a double hand slam there that doesn't even affect the whole arena. You can just dodge around it. It's usually when he does his one-handed smacks or his little swipes there that you want to actually take advantage of the grapple points to swing around behind him. But otherwise, you're fine. Just keep attacking him. Oh, he also has that attack where he unleashes a soul fire breath thing. You always want to dodge around. You always want to grapple around the other side when he does that. Always, 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 always. Hope you enjoyed, everybody. I will see you all next time for more God of War 3. We're about to take Hades' soul and have ourselves a viable path to leave. So I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.